Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. We are so glad you are here. Today, we are going to, I don't know about debunk, but today we're going to talk about
Set the record straight.
set the record straight on some Mormon stereotypes that you may have heard about. So, let's start with probably one of the biggest ones, right? Little buddy Joe Smith.
Number 1, Mormons worship Joseph Smith. What will a Mormon tell you?
We don't worship Joseph Smith. We worship Jesus Christ.
And God the Father and the Holy Ghost. The Trinitarian view, right?
Not Joseph Smith.
Not Joseph Smith.
However,
However,
I think one of the most damning things that always bothered me when I was in the church about Joseph Smith was singing the song from the hymn book called Praise to the Man. And it's literally a song singing
praises
to Joseph Smith. That's the whole song. Praise to the man who communed with Jehovah. Like, literally, the whole effing song is about how great Joseph Smith is.
Sounds like idolatry to me.
Yes.
Another really damning aspect is in the Doctrine and Covenants, it says that Joseph Smith did more than any other man save Jesus only for the salvation of man. That's paraphrasing, obviously.
That's nuts. That is nutty.
I don't know how do you, and well, you have to be doing mental gymnastics to reconcile that with yourself and say,
Big
no,
time.
He was just a man, an infallible man. We don't talk about his very long list of problems and issues and scandals and run-ins with the law, etc., etc.
Oh, yeah. All those things. So, do Mormons really worship Joseph Smith? We'll let you decide.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2. Mormons practice polygamy.
What will a true believing Mormon say? No, we do not practice polygamy.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
We did at one time, and it was a trial, and it was very difficult for everybody who had to participate, and the saints were just really weighed down by this experience, and they had such a hard time with it.
And Brigham Young looked upon a corpse in a casket before he was buried and wished that he could have been that corpse in that casket, then have to practice polygamy.
So, keep that frame of reference in mind
nauseam.
as we move along into the actual truth behind polygamy. And the mainstream Mormon church doesn't practice polygamy here in this life. Mm-hmm. Let us be clear, okay? However, Mormons in the mainstream Mormon church practice polygamy in the next life, okay? So we have sealings and marriages, right? So sealings is you're connected to each other for eternity. Sealings back to Adam, blah, 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 right? Mm-hmm. So essentially, a dude can be sealed to as many women as he pleases. And in the afterlife, Mormons will just tell you it'll get sorted out and not to worry about it. Red flag, I don't know.
Red flag.
And then women can't be sealed to multiple men. That's not allowed. Well, I mean, Joseph Smith did it, but now it's not allowed. And so Mormons will say we don't practice it here, but we still kind of are practicing it here because we're setting it up now to be in the afterlife.
To be part of it in the afterlife.
Right? Yeah. So, they're doing the work in the temples to make this happen now, to make this happen in the afterlife, but they're doing the work for these people now. So, technically, they're making polygamy happen now. It's just going to be lived that way in the hereafter. Yeah. And if people have questions about, well, my husband was sealed to another woman before me, and what's that going to look like in the afterlife? And the general authorities will be like, don't worry about those things. It'll all be worked out. Like, oh, you little peon, don't worry. It'll be fine in the afterlife.
It's important to note that the current sitting prophet, Russell M. Nelson, is sealed to his current wife, Wendy, and sealed to the mother of his children. So he is going to be a polygamist in the celestial kingdom, as they believe.
Yep.
So, yes, Mormons do practice polygamy. However, because it's illegal, they don't do it in a living fashion anymore. So,
And then you have the splinter groups that still practice based on fundamental Mormon
the
doctrine,
mainstream LDS church does not practice it.
Here.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Let's clarify. Someone complained about that the other day on one of our videos.
Oh, wow. Semantics.
You mean the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Yeah. I mean, Mormons.
Yeah. Number 3.
Mormons can't have caffeine.
As a true believing Mormon, I drink caffeine. I am drinking a Coke right now.
Mormons can drink caffeine. Okay. That's why if you live in Utah or if you're familiar with Utah or if you've been here before, there are like a bajillion soda shops here. Like legit soda shops that do nothing but sell variations of soda.
They'll take like a regular soda and they'll add syrups and things to it.
Yeah.
And and then at the Maverick, you got your 44-ounce standard soda. It's a big soda consuming state here, and not just non-caffeinated beverages. There are some Mormons who don't drink caffeine.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of people drink Mountain Dew. A lot of people drink Dr. Pepper, Coke,
Diet
Coke.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So Mormons drink soda. So that idea of no caffeine comes from the Word of Wisdom, which is like a health code that Mormons live by that was created by Joseph Smith. And that specifically says hot drinks, which at the time
shouldn't be consumed.
Yeah. So at the time that was considered to be coffee and tea. And so still today, Mormons do not drink coffee and do not drink tea because it is against the Word of Wisdom. And they have to obey the Word of Wisdom in order to get into the temple, in order to have a temple recommend, blah, blah, blah. But at one time it was misconstrued as caffeine. And so some Mormons didn't drink caffeine because of it.
Tea has caffeine and coffee has caffeine. It could be an addictive substance for some, and it is a stimulant, so they probably kind of took that and ran with it. But yeah, nowadays there's no taboo with drinking soda or anything, which is kind of funny because the whole health code thing stipulates other things that nobody really follows. It's really just the
eat meat sparingly, and
it's really what they focus on with the Word of Wisdom is not partaking in tea and coffee, alcohol or tobacco, and then illicit drugs. So
yes, Mormons can and do drink soda.
Caffeine and soda. Number 4, Mormons are not allowed to dance.
This is false. This is just one of those that are like blatantly false.
Yeah.
There's no... I think there might be some references to it in For the Strength of Youth and like dancing and things.
No, there's like a specific section for it.
Yeah. But it's like, be appropriate and don't gyrate on each other, basically.
Yeah. Obviously, the stipulation is nothing that's like sexually suggestive or things like that.
Keep a Book of Mormon between you.
A Book of Mormon's distance between people when they're slow dancing. And that's really rigidly applied to youth dances.
Which the church holds a lot of youth dances. And, like, there are Mormons who go to regular, like, high school dances, like prom and homecoming and things. Yeah. But the church also holds their own, I think, to kind of reinforce their standards and appropriateness with dances. Yeah.
Living in Colorado, our high school didn't really care about having regular dances or anything like that. So the church would put on one, like, every single month. And I would frequent them with my friends, and I mean, it wasn't bad. It's a little cringy, and you do the little deacon side-to-side two-step when you slow dance, but
I did not participate in these.
Yeah, they would always hate on us when we were getting too riled up and moshing, which no, but it's always a good time. So Mormons can dance, but in an appropriate manner.
Yes. So no, like, not footloose up in here. Mormons can dance. Number 5.
Women can't speak in church or hold leadership positions. What do you say? True believing Mormon.
This is like triggering for me in my soul. A true believing Mormon would tell you that is absolutely not true, that the church values and appreciates the roles of women and what they bring to the table and holds women in high esteem. And that's great and all, but words and actions aren't matching up. The gist is Mormon women can be in leadership positions. They can be head of the women's organization called the Relief Society. They can be head of the Young Women's Organization, which is in charge of all the young women. They can be in other random auxiliary callings like family history or primary, the young kids organization over all the littles, nursery over all the babies. Are you seeing a pattern here? There are no positions where women can be in charge of men within the church.
Not a single one.
Because ultimately, Mormon men have the priesthood. And not even Mormon men. Mormon boys, 12 and older, have the priesthood.
True.
And so anybody, like, they have the ultimate say in everything. So you can't really put a woman who doesn't have the priesthood. Which it's ironic because they'll be like, no, women have the priesthood. Like, women can access the priesthood. But then why can't women be in leadership positions over men? They can access the priesthood, but...
Through men.
Through men. Not in leadership positions.
Yeah.
Over men, because ultimately they have the final say.
So, yeah. Women will be set apart for their calling. A man will give them a blessing and essentially give them authority and dominion over their calling, which is under the direction of the men, the bishopric, the bishop and his counselors in the ward, and things like that.
Do you smell that? That's stank-ass patriarchy. Disgusting.
So, the short answer, can women speak in church and be in leadership positions?
Kind of.
Kind of.
But not really.
Number 6.
All Mormons are Republicans or conservative.
This is an interesting one because it is a little bit of a gray area, and it's up to the interpretation of whoever does it. Let me pull up the fuck is Safari? Can't see around this shit.
Good thing it's easy to cut things out.
Okay. So, when you are a Mormon and you want to go into the temple to participate in the ceremonies or rituals that they have in there, you have to go to your local faith leaders, your bishop, your stake president above your bishop, and you have to have a worthiness interview. One of those worthiness questions is verbatim, do you support or promote any teachings, practices, or doctrine contrary to those of the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Keyword there being contrary and any. Any and contrary are very are big underlined words in that sentence, in that question. So you can't associate with anything, including, I mean, really, political organizations that speak about things that are contrary to what the church believes. And so that's why you run into a lot of people getting in trouble for supporting the LGBTQ plus community, because technically that's against the teachings of the church.
Yep. They lobby strongly against
legalizing gay marriage.
Equality in marriage, the ERA?
Equal Rights Amendment, medicinal marijuana, recreational marijuana.
So a lot of those tend to fall under the umbrella of a certain political organization that would not match up with Republican values on a lot of cases. We don't want to paint with a broad brush, and we don't want to get into politics. However,
it takes all kinds of kinds. There are definitely some progressive Mormons. They call themselves progmos. We used to identify as progmos when we were in the church, who are more left-leaning, more Democrat-leaning. There are political organizations that are, LDS Democrats. But primarily, based on data, you're going to see members of the church
vastly right-leaning. Yeah. So that's our little disclaimer. We're not speaking for everyone because there are a lot of
There's
members
people
of
all along the spectrum.
Mormon church who are left-leaning, who aren't Republicans, but I would say the vast majority of people who live in the United States are Republicans. Number 7.
Mormons get naked in the temple.
This was part of the temple ceremony before. It was part of the temple ceremony, the washing and anointing ceremony.
Also called the initiatory.
It is now done symbolically. When it was performed, you would strip down and get into a tub, and they would wash you with water, and then they would anoint your body in different places with oil. Now it's done symbolically. They will just take some water, swipe it across your forehead, and put a little drop of oil on your head. It's even evolved from when I received that ordinance for myself. I went in and I had to put on the temple garment for the first time, my little
the Mormon
undies.
Underwear.
Yeah, so I put that on. I had nothing else on except for this thing they called a shield.
Looks like a poncho.
It's like a weird poncho, yeah. And they still did it symbolically, but I had to be in just my garments and this shield. It was really kind of unsettling, but I didn't think anything of it at the time.
And by the time I went through the temple, that had changed, and so I was just in my regular temple dress with my Mormon underwear, obviously under my dress.
Already on.
And so it has evolved over the years. But
it has changed.
In reality, everybody kind of gets nude in the temple because you change clothes in the temple.
Yeah.
Like in a locker room, but you're in a private stall.
True.
So
at that point, yeah, you do get naked in the temple.
Yeah. That's the reality of it.
So
just not the way you think.
If you're into splitting hairs, yes, they do get naked in the temple.
Just like you get naked at the gym or...
Yeah. Generally, it's in a locker and not in public anymore.
Yeah. So in short, kind of, but not really anymore.
Not really.
Number 8.
Can Mormons use birth control?
Mostly. Yes. In the past, there was some about birth control. That's no longer, really. The church has a written stance on it that it's between a husband and wife, how many kids they have, if they use some form of birth control, whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's evolved over time. However, church insurance companies don't cover birth control. And so there is kind of this mixed messaging a little bit going on back and forth. And there is kind of I think it's shifted over the last few years, at least when we were still in the church. I feel like there's a much more positive cultural attitude around birth control. I feel like it's much more common now than it used to be. But you're still going to find your Mormons who don't believe in birth control.
Yeah. It's a lot different from a lot of other religions out there that are more high demand. But it is kind of strange that their insurance companies don't cover birth control. Generally an exclusion. So unless you meet some other... some very intense health criteria. Yeah.
I've personally tried to get it covered because I have endometriosis, and I personally tried to get it covered for that reason, and they still wouldn't cover it.
Yeah.
So,
and that was even deemed medically necessary by her OB-GYN.
By my, exactly.
So they can have birth control, but
again,
don't try to get it on the church's insurance because you're going to be paying out of pocket 100%.
Which is just ironic because it just drives people to Planned Parenthood for cheaper birth control. So it's kind of... Oops. Once again. But yeah. Words, actions.
Deeds.
Always come out on top.
Number 9.
Mormons don't believe in the Bible.
Every Mormon will tell you this is totally false. And as a former missionary, I will tell you also, on the whole, is false. However, there is very, very strong emphasis put on the Book of Mormon. Every single general conference, which happens twice a year, they will tell you to read your Book of Mormon, read your Book of Mormon, read your Book of Mormon.
Struggling in the church, read your Book of Mormon. Have questions you don't have answers to, read the Book of Mormon. In a faith crisis, read the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
It's the answer to everything.
And they will study the Bible, and
in seminary.
That's great, yeah. However, I could count on maybe one hand how many times they've encouraged people to read your Bible in general conference. So it is important to them, but not nearly as important.
They literally call the Book of Mormon the keystone of their religion.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's going to be there's lots of people who talk about the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
The Book of Mormon is unique to the Mormon Church. So they're obviously going to spend more time on that front than they would in the Bible. And that's my experience and his. Obviously, we can't speak for everyone. But there's definitely more of an emphasis on the Book of Mormon.
Yeah. So, do Mormons believe in the Bible?
Yes.
Yes.
As long as it's translated.
So long as it's translated correctly.
And finally, number 10.
Mormon women have to be stay-at-home moms.
So, we got some beef from some people in our last video when we talked about my personal feelings on the roles of women in the church. If you watch our video about the differences, the Mormon gender roles and patriarchy and whatnot, we delve into some of the direction and quotes from leadership that have talked about the roles of women, which the 3 primary roles are companionship, homemaking, and motherhood. Those are the 3. And this was dictated by a prophet. Okay, so bear with me. So women can work outside the home in the Mormon Church. It is not uncommon anymore for women to have jobs outside the home. However, in my experience and growing up in the church, the majority of the women that I encountered worked because they had to, not because they wanted to. Many of them expressly talked about in Relief Society, the women's organization, that they wish they would be able to stay home, but financially it's just not an option for them, and so they didn't. And then the vast majority of the others stayed home as stay-at-home moms. And so there's a pretty large distinction there. And so, yes, obviously you will encounter many Mormon women who work. And obviously gender roles and traditional gender roles are changing and evolving with time. And so it's going to be more accepted, if you will, that women work outside the home, especially Mormon women. But I think for the most part, it stays the same. Yep. And the desire at least stays the same for women to stay home, especially when it's constantly encouraged by the prophets. And they talk about how important it is for moms to be at home and to be raising the children, and how important motherhood is to be in the home with the children, and how women working can actually be taking away from the spiritual progression of the family. Another quote from the prophet, things of that nature. So yes, women can work outside the home. Is it like, yes, empower women to work outside the home?
Absolutely not.
No.
So as a parting gift to you, here is a great quote that has to do with that subject.
Women in the workplace. Ready? Here we go. Okay, this is Richard G. Scott. Leadership from the church. Of course, as a woman, you can do exceptionally well in the workplace, but is that the best use of your divinely appointed talents and feminine traits? So
that was an apostle.
That was an apostle.
And he said those words. So
what do I smell again? Patriarchy? Yeah, it stinks.
So women can work outside, or can be.
They can. But is the attitude supportive? Absolutely not.
Mormons baptize corpses. This
Yikes.
is not true at all. That would be gross, and I would definitely have been out like that. However, it does come from the idea of baptisms for the dead. So baptism for the dead is a way to spread the gospel to those people who did not exist on planet Earth when it was around in its fullness, which is a lot of people. The church has only existed for a little under 200 years now, and there have been a lot of people who have lived on the planet before that and during that time that never ever came in contact with Mormons. So this is the way that they are able to
spread the gospel to everybody.
Yeah, posthumously spread the gospel to people who never got it. So the idea behind the baptism for the dead is to do these ordinances or temple work vicariously through a person that is living. For example,
so I would go in with McKay, like as proxy. So I'm going in to be baptized. McKay is the person who's going to baptize me in the font in the temple, and he's going to say whatever it is.
Sister Jordan, having been commissioned of Jesus Christ, I baptize you for in behalf of XYZ person
who
is dead in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. And then I'd dunk her down. Boom. And then the next name would follow, because you tend to have a lot of names to do baptisms for the dead of people who are gone.
I don't think I've ever done less than 10 people in a baptism.
Yeah. So you're usually getting like waterboarded. You're
dunked. So we're not like, they're not digging up bodies and like, gross. They're not doing that.
There would be a lot more of an issue if that were the case.
For sure. There's still something to be said for this not being essentially a non-consensual practice. Can the dead give consent? I'll leave that for you to answer, but that's the issue that people have with it. And Mormons don't do this from a place of ill will or bad intentions. Mormons truly believe that in order for their family members to get to the highest level of heaven, these are things that need to be done so they can see them again. And so this truly does come from a place of good intentions. However, we do have the concept of consent, and it is kind of inappropriate, especially when we've heard of many instances of people who have reached out to us and said these kinds of things, like baptisms and things, have been done in behalf of relatives who specifically asked while they were alive for it not to be done. So respect people's wishes, regardless of whether they're here or not.
Honor the dead.
Honor the dead, period.
So Mormons do not baptize corpses.
They do baptize.
They do baptize vicariously for the dead.
That is a very
some
really important differences there.
Can you imagine that water? Gross.
So there you have it.
There you have it. Those are 10 common Mormon myths that you may have run across. A few of those are actually kind of common questions that we get. So it is good to kind of just get that out in the open. That way people are educated and kind of know what it's about. So thanks for bearing with us. I have a lot of editing to do.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. We post weekly.
Yeah.
The number of videos
we're trying to ramp it up a little bit.
We're getting there.
All you new people, so
yeah,
we're getting there. But
make sure you follow us on social media. We have an Instagram that I post on daily, so you can kind of see what we do in our boring day-to-day life.
Yep.
We also have a TikTok where we post videos daily, and so make sure you follow both of those.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, and
thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time.